everyone, and welcome to God's Plan, Your Part, a podcast where our goal is to read the entire Bible in a year, seeking to understand God's plan of redemption while discovering daily and practically your part in it.
Want to know what God hates? He hates lies. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking a little bit about specifically that being called out in our plethora of chapters for today. So we're finishing out Zechariah in chapters 8 through 14. And there's a lot of things that stick out today, but that was one that really stuck out to me a lot as we were reading through. So Ryan, anything else that popped out at you while we were reading through these chapters today?
Here's what popped out to me. You guys don't know it because you just listen day in and day out, but we are returning after like a 2-week break from the podcast. So luckily, because we were able to plan ahead, it was not a break for you. But we spent like the last 2 weeks in the mountains of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Shout out to the listeners we have around the Knoxville area.
Yeah.
You live in a beautiful place, and we enjoy being there very much. So we survived some battles with some bears and some rainy days and some beautiful, beautiful sunrises and lots of bluegrass music. If you don't like bluegrass, I'm sad for you.
Shout out to those Nashville listeners too. They're not necessarily where we were, but we have visited there also in the past.
But we are back. So you didn't know we were gone, but we were gone. And today we're back. And I don't know, I feel a little bit foggy, to be honest. So it's kind of funny to have like a foggy mind and jump into the second half of Zechariah.
Well, it does help, though. One thing we have been talking about with these prophets is that they all carry the same message, which is helpful because we appreciate that about God's word. There's a lot of prophets carrying the same message, but we're at the point now in Zechariah's prophecy where he is talking about like the impending doom, what's going to happen, how God's going to save that remnant piece, how he's going to send his son Jesus for that remnant piece, and how his kingdom will basically endure forever because of this said promise that's coming.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, I think, is that the first half of Zechariah, now this is funny because I talked about this 2 weeks ago, the first half of Zechariah is like, don't despise small beginnings. Mm-hmm. Like, you are trying to be faithful. Now, there's two different audiences in this book, so don't let that confuse you. But Zechariah is saying you're trying to be faithful. It feels like it's not worth it. It seems like you should just pursue your best life now. Have you ever heard that before?
Too much.
Don't despise the fact that your obedience seems like it's not gaining you much. The second part of the book is like, there's going to be destruction and judgment, and God is going to come out against those who are his enemies, but those who are obedient are going to be cared for and rewarded. Mm-hmm. So you don't despise those small beginnings because God uses them to accomplish much bigger things.
So we're kind of circling back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. It really stuck out to me as I've just been, I don't know, I feel like I've been really weighed down by just all of the corruption and just terrible, awful sin nature of our world, not just even in our own country here in the U.S., but I know there's corruption on every single front. It feels like there is very, very little that I'm hearing that is positive, that is true, that is wholesome or like God seeking in any way. So it was very interesting to me as we are coming right into chapter 8. We're talking about this is entitled The Coming Peace and Prosperity of Zion. So it talks about in verse 16, it says, this is what the Lord of hosts says. It says, speak the truth to one another, render in your gates judgments that are true and make for peace. First of all, that feels like very, very, like a very hard thing to find these days. But then it continues on and says, do not devise evil in your hearts against one another, and love no false oath, for all these things I hate, declares the Lord. And I think as a mom, that word hate really hits me hard because like that's not one we talk about in our house. We don't talk about things that we hate because that's probably like detestable. We don't tell each other we hate each other. And so like when I see that word, it's like, oh shoot. That's what I tell the boys. When we see hate, that's like, like we want to really hurt somebody very badly. So when I saw that, I was just like, shoot, it's kind of nice to know the things that the Lord hates. And it really like firms up for me that lying there's no place. There's absolutely no place for it. We speak the truth to one another, because if we don't, the Lord actually hates that part of you.
And there is so much of our world today, guys. There's so much of our world today that is lying, but refusing to admit that that's what they're doing. And so it's like, well, yeah, like I hid this little piece, but it really wasn't appropriate to share that piece. Or we didn't really want to be that forthcoming with this information because it's just really, not everybody needs to know that. Can you imagine what that would do to the mission if we shared that piece? And so I think I was listening to you, Jenny, about like how much you're against lying. And we're not making just like a blatantly political statement. I mean, we are making a political statement, but actually I think the issue with lying is starting in our own homes, our own businesses, our own organizations, our own churches, where we've convinced ourselves that just like not totally completely telling the truth really is the wiser thing. And so it's concerning to me because I think that is exactly the message that was happening in that day.
Yeah.
Like you think of lying as like some crazy, scandalous cover up, and obviously that is lying. But a lot of times lying that affects us, our individual lives and our relationship with God are just those like carefully calculated, tiny gray areas that you know are just lies. Why are you lying to yourself about the lies that you're telling?
Right.
That's actually, I think that one of the most dangerous one of the most, I can't talk. One of the most dangerous places a person can be is where they are lying to themselves about the lies that they are telling, because we love to believe our own lies. And then you become somebody you never intended to be.
Right. And I think something that we've like even talked to with our own sons recently is like when we think of Satan, he is often referred to as the father
of
lies.
Yeah.
So that really hit home even with our own sons, and like even thinking about it to my like in my own mind, how am I processing this and explaining this to my children? Like if you think of any situation where there's any type of corruption or any type, like bottom line, there's lies. And like Satan loves the fact that we are so willing to just hide those things or keep those little parts of whatever it is that we know is wrong to ourselves, because maybe you're not necessarily outwardly lying, but you're also like withholding truth from people. So like the Lord says right here, make judgments that are true and make peace. Speak truth to one another, like the entire truth. And you can see in our world today how like the truth is it's so lost that once you just like dig, it's probably so like hidden somewhere in there. But it's just so frustrating to know that lies are just what cover most of
And they're so
everything.
prevalent that we just accept them. It's
Yeah.
not the president's fault that everybody's a liar. It's our own faults that
But
we're
it is-
so willing.
It's encouraging though to know, like when I read this, it's like, nope, there's no confusion. The Lord hates lies. We are to tell the truth, speak the truth always. So that's interesting to me.
So chapter 9 is looking forward to this coming king, this person who is going to make everything right, who's going to rule and reign in some future kingdom. And there is a really interesting tidbit in chapter 9. Behold, your king is coming to you, righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. It's exactly what Jesus does when he does the triumphal entry, when he comes into Jerusalem riding on a donkey, signifying that he is a leader of peace, not of war, that he's not a conquering king, he's a peaceful king that is going to bring righteousness and salvation. It's really interesting that those are the two words, because how could a person accomplish salvation? Only God can accomplish salvation. And so we have Jesus being this coming king that accomplishes salvation on all of our behalves.
And what's super cool is in the past, we've known Israel to be this very, very victorious, war-leading nation. And in this, it's saying straight up in verse 10 of chapter 9, I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim. I will and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off. So basically it's like, it's not going to happen through all those things anymore. And what it will come in the form of is one who will speak peace to the nations, like you were talking about. So that is so interesting to me, because they're all just like anticipating this magnificent war hero that's going to come in and just like cut off everybody or kill off everybody. But that's not what this is referring to. And it's awesome that Jesus is coming through and basically fulfilling this piece, as well as in chapter 10, he is referred to as what we will also see him in the future as the cornerstone, which is really, really cool. I love to see all these different things connected and woven so like beautifully between New and Old Testament. It's really awesome.
Finally, the thing that stuck out to me is you have another call out for the wicked shepherds. The shepherds who were evil, who took advantage of God's flock. There's some lengthy judgments against them. I'm thinking of chapter 11, verse 17. Woe to my worthless shepherd who deserts the flock. May the sword strike his arm and his right eye. Let his arm be wholly withered and his right eye utterly blinded. There's, again, this issue raised in Zechariah that's been raised in a lot of these prophetic books. I'm thinking specifically of Ezekiel 34, that is these wicked people who have been put in charge of God's people, and as they led poorly, the people followed poorly. God has a deep heart and love and concern for his people, his sheep, his flock, and the shepherds that he puts over them have a significant responsibility. And here again in Zechariah, we see that these shepherds have abandoned their responsibilities so they can enrich themselves, and God is going to judge them. So I remember when I talked about Ezekiel 34, this is an important passage for aspiring Christian leaders. I would say Zechariah 11 is the same thing. We need to be leaders who honor the Lord, who tell the truth, who have deep concern for the people. And God, I think, despises leaders who are not that way. That idea of shepherd is going to continue throughout the rest of the book.
And it's good to stop for a moment and talk about that, because as we were reading, there are shepherds that are talked about before that are bad shepherds. And then this shepherd that we keep hearing about through the end of the book, or majority of the time, is referring to Jesus, who is the good shepherd who will come, who will be crucified for the world.
Yeah, and you can actually look in chapter 13, it talks about how the sword will be raised against the good shepherd, and the people will be scattered.
Which can be confusing, because sometimes you're like, wait, is he like striking down a bad one and they will scatter? Because that happens too. But this is a different type of scattering. And
historically, that's been understood two different ways in Christian circles, like that work together. The first one being that Jesus was struck, he was arrested, the disciples were scattered, the followers, the believers were scattered, but ultimately they were reunited and the Holy Spirit fell on them and they were strengthened. The idea is that this good shepherd will be struck, the people will be scattered, but the people will be united and strengthened. And then there's also kind of a way of looking at this that sees AD 70, like when the Romans destroy Jerusalem and the believers are scattered around the empire and around the world. It's another time of dispersion where people are spread out, but ultimately will be brought back together in a stronger sense with a stronger centralized church in place. And so if that's confusing to you, that's kind of what's going on there.
So what would you say is a good your part for today? Because I'm thinking there's a couple. I mean, we could definitely address like the lying piece.
I think that your part is be honest.
Yeah.
We chose just because we personally resonated with this lying piece.
Just kind of hit home a little bit. Like, there's so much that is surrounding us now that's like, I don't trust. I've literally said this in the last week. I don't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm so guarded because everybody lies so casually, and just like, it's just part of normal conversation. It feels like, whether you're on like a super low level of just like whatever conversations with whoever you're around, to like way up to people with lots and lots and lots of power and authority. It just seems like such a rampant sin. And I just feel like I want to be the difference. I want to be the one who is hating the same things that the Lord hates, lying being that said thing. So I would encourage you today, just seek truth in all circumstances and instances of your life. Again, we go back to that little thought that I've had for so long throughout my college years and even post-college 10 years now, basically, to identify what is true and discern what is deception. Ask the Lord to continually guide you in that as you seek truth, seek God's truth in this world of a lot of lies and deception. So remember that for today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.